We are live. Hi, everyone. Well, no one's here yet. Let me make sure I don't repeat the same mistake I did last time and keep this thing on unlisted. Hey there. How are you? So I'm curious, let me know, did you get this alert through an email? Did you get like a YouTube notice? Did you get it on Twitter? Oh, good. We have to be public, otherwise we wouldn't have 20 people here already. Hey, everybody. Good to be back. YouTube notification. Okay, good. Then we're public. Let me just tweet this thing out, and then we'll get started. Fantastic. I've got like 3 computer screens in front of me. That's why I'm always looking all over the place. Hey, hey, hey. And by the way, I have figured out how to read all of the history of the comments, so I don't have to keep asking people to repost their questions. So that's awesome. Beautiful. All right, so check it out. I mean, there are so many. I get so many comments that come in from, between the time between videos, and so many messages come in with comments that I've been copying and pasting them. So I think there's some comments I've already received that I'd like to address, and of course anything that comes up, any live questions, I'll address them as well. I'll probably just kind of take turns going back and forth between those things. Let me get the... Hey there. Let me get my YouTube comment history up. Is there a get-together in Denver? There is this weekend, yeah. Which website? You mean the Scientology website, Smith-Levin.com? The vicious hater. What was the response to the CLS? Hello from Canada. Hello in Canada. The film The Master, they kind of ignored that. That was a big embarrassment for Tom Cruise because I'm going to forget who the director was, but it was the same director who had done Magnolia, so Tom had worked with him before. And I think Scientologists are under the impression that anyone Tom works with ever has been safe-pointed with Scientology. Safe-pointed means Tom has sort of secured them as a safe person in the environment who will defend Scientology, because if you just come into proximity with Tom Cruise through osmosis, you must come to realize how wonderful and amazing Scientology is. So let me see. And so I've got to find the name of that director. Magnolia director. Paul Thomas Anderson. Yeah, I think someone mentioned that. Hello. And Paul Thomas Anderson... Yeah, you don't just accidentally make a movie about L. Ron Hubbard. Like, that was... Within Scientology, we definitely thought that was Paul Thomas Anderson somehow giving a big fuck you to Tom Cruise. I was still in the Sea Org when that movie came out. I remember everyone was really, really happy when the movie did not win Best Picture. And in fact, I think that was when Brokeback Mountain won Best Picture. And it's quite ironic that Scientologists were happy that a movie about gay cowboys won Best Oscar. Hello in Tennessee. All right, let me just get my comment history. Oh, there it is. There's the comment history. Okay, how do I break out the comment history? Pop out the chat. Awesome, we're in business. Okay, let's go. I'm going to just address a couple of questions I've copied and pasted that have come in since the last video, and then I'm going to tackle the comment history on this video, okay? All right, so here's one. For whatever reason, I don't feel comfortable giving the names of the people who leave the comments. I'm not sure if people generally want me to say their name. Brokeback won Best Director, not Best Picture. Okay, I got that wrong. But I'm pretty sure that The Master did not win any Oscars for writing or directing or Best Picture. So Put in the comments what actually won Best Picture that year. I don't remember. Okay, here's the question. Since the Church of Scientology believes that you live multiple lives, does Scientology frown on parishioners or staff who overmourn the loss of loved ones? For new members, have you ever witnessed this drive them away from the Church of Scientology? Great question. And the answer is yes. It is considered, there's many words in Scientology that you could use to describe it. Casey, banky, dramatizing, and to over mourn the loss of a loved one. So it is it's not that you're going to be looked down upon necessarily. If you're a staff member or a Sea Org member, you're probably going to be looked down upon because as a staff member or a Sea Org member, you were told that you are not allowed to demonstrate having a reactive mind. It's called having case on post. Wow, I really, those movies were that far apart? All right, well, I'm totally full of shit then. Okay, now if you're just a public and you're over mourning the loss of somebody, you're not looked down upon. It's just considered that you are experiencing the effects of your reactive mind. That the emotion that you feel from having lost someone really stems from the stimulation of earlier incidents that have happened hundreds or thousands of times over your existence where you lost people previously. And therefore, you sort of have the current incident wrapped up with the past incident. And so anyway, the spirit of your question is totally accurate. It is considered aberrated or not ideal or not optimum to be overly sad or mournful or regretful over the loss of anyone or anything, really. All right, so that's that question. Next. This is the question that has been bugging me for a while. I've read that Scientologists believe that psychs are actually aliens. All right, let me bring the questions a little closer to the camera so I'm not like staring off into the corner of the room. Okay. That psychs are actually aliens. Do average Scientologists believe that? If so, how do they square this with the fact that psychologists and psychiatrists look just like everyone else? Is it like the body Thetan where some spirit possesses you? Okay, good question. This is something I think commonly gets misunderstood when the media portrays Scientology as an alien cult or an alien religion, or when they describe body Thetans as being inhabited by alien souls. The problem here is with the word alien. I can look up the precise definition, but the general essence is something other than us. You know what I mean? Whether you're talking about illegal aliens or aliens, they're called that. Even the concept alien means foreign and unfamiliar. So the problem with using the word alien in this context when we're talking about Scientology and Thetans and psychiatrists is because if you believe the story of Scientology, we are all aliens. In the sense that we are not of this world, and that no Thetans are of a world. No Thetans, like your body might have evolved on this planet, but as a Thetan, you're not from any planet. And also remember that Scientology's concept of a Thetan is something without matter, energy, space, time, or form. Like it's a static. Scientology says Thetans have no position in space or time, which is funny though, because even LRH doesn't talk about Thetans time traveling. He only talks about like teleporting to anywhere in the universe that you want to be. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because a Thetan, if it was in its native state, according to Scientology, and not stuck and tied to a body, could really just by thinking a thought or whatever, be anywhere in the universe they want to be. So it sort of negates the use of the word alien. Alien means not of this world. And whereas, yes, Scientologists do believe in aliens. That's because Scientologists believe that life in this universe is very similar to how it's portrayed in Star Wars, meaning everywhere. You should expect all planets to have life, and life can take any sort of forms. Have I answered this question? That psychs are aliens. Okay, here's not that. Okay, the belief in Scientology is not that literally the psychiatrist on the corner is an alien. It's that. First of all, understand that Scientologists believe all life on this planet has alien origins, period. L. Ron Hubbard says that psychiatry and psychology, which Scientologists truly don't know the difference between. Scientologists believe that psychologists are simply psychiatrists that don't have a license to prescribe drugs. That is what we are taught is the difference. Psychiatrists prescribe drugs, psychologists don't. As far as Scientologists are concerned, that is the only difference. Okay, so where was I going here? Oh, that all life, Scientologists believe all life has alien origins, and that the subject of psychiatry and psychology is not a new subject. They do not believe the subject was created by Freud. They believe that the knowledge of these subjects and the use of these subjects to control and drug populations is something that's existed in this universe for trillions of years. So he doesn't, L. Ron Hubbard never gets into details on how the exact body of knowledge that became psychiatry, like he doesn't say an alien came down and, whispered in Sigmund Freud's ear while he was high on heroin, and that's how he got this knowledge. LRH doesn't ever give specific explanations for how he claims the alien knowledge of psychiatry proliferated amongst us on Earth. He never says it, but he does definitely say that psychiatrists have been the ones basically starting all the trouble in all the societies on all the planets for the last many trillions of years. So what you're asking is essentially correct. Just don't believe that extra part that Scientologists think psychiatrists are aliens in some different way than they believe we're all aliens. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, I think I've addressed that question. Next. I don't comment on YouTube, so I figured I would drop you a line anyway. I was wondering if you could touch on R245, and if you know of any stories about it. The only time I've ever really heard it mentioned is in the Steve Fishman deposition. I hope all is well. Okay. R245 was a joke in Scientology. It was a joke LRH told, and I did a bunch of searches online before I did this live stream to see what is out there about R245, so I could address that. There was a book. Again, what was it called? Exteriorization. I'm going to get it wrong. I didn't want to address this partially because I'm not going to remember the accurate name of this book. But there was a period where LRH was putting special attention on processes that he claimed could help a thetan exteriorize from the body, which basically, exteriorization is a thetan having an out-of-body experience, but causatively and consciously. Like not in a dream state. Like if you were sitting right there where you are right now, and all of a sudden, instead of thinking you're in your body and seeing with eyeballs, you just sort of backed out of your head, and all of a sudden you were looking at yourself, but we're fully aware of it and we're controlling your body. That is what Scientologists would call exteriorizing. I have never experienced that. I have never had the delusion of that occurring, and I've never met a Scientologist who convinced me that they had, which I think says something considering I was surrounded by the most dedicated Scientologists for about 15 to 20 years. So there was a period of time where LRH was focusing on processes that would easily exteriorize the thetan from the body. And his idea, the rationale behind that is that once you exteriorize the thetan, they no longer have to wonder whether they're a thetan. They also never have to wonder if anything LRH says is correct or if Scientology works, because if you're studying Scientology and then you exteriorize, you are immediately going to believe that everything LRH ever fucking said was pretty much accurate. Because there's nobody else out there that I know of, but what do I know, teaching people how to exteriorize. And LRH claimed to be doing this. And I think that's what really got a lot of people and kept a lot of people in Scientology, was this promise, this hope that they were going to be able to exteriorize, since LRH was pretending like this was happening every day in auditing sessions. People were just exteriorizing all over the place. And during my time in Scientology, Scientologists do not shy away from making claims and casually talking about themselves exteriorizing. So I didn't say no one's ever told me a story about exteriorizing. No one's ever convinced me that it was true. So R245, this is the joke. The joke is that if you take a Colt 45 and you shoot someone in the head and you kill them, you will exteriorize the thetan. It's a joke because if you know the story of Scientology and thetans and bodies, it's true. When you die, you're supposed to automatically exteriorize. And so if you really want to exteriorize someone, just kill them. So it's a joke because they would defeat the purpose of trying to exteriorize someone. Because in Scientology, if you believe what they say, if you kill that person, he's going to go to the implant station on Mars or Venus and have his thetan memory wiped and be shot back down to Earth to pick up a body. And you will not have done him any favors. Now he'll be stuck in a little body, a little baby body, and not be able to talk or walk or anything. And it'll be, years before you can even talk to the guy again. So I understand some people like to say, oh my God, this is important. R245 seems to advocate murder. That's not accurate. It's also because of this joke, R245 is kind of a euphemism for killing someone. And so let's say two Scientologists were, maybe discussing a headline in the news where, someone went in and shot up a place. They might jokingly call that R245. But there's nothing about R245 that actually advocates murder. And no, I've never heard of any Scientologist or Sea Org member or anything using R245 to justify murder. Okay, let me see. Next question. It seems like there's a disconnect from the rhetoric of Scientology and the way they pursue their goals. What I mean is that Hubbard talks about the grand scale of existence and the fate of all life, and yet his clique is engaged in activities like increasing literacy and combating addiction. Noble as these pursuits might be, they aren't going to make this group an international influencer. My question is, how did you and how do Scientologists rationalize the gap between Hubbard's rhetoric and the actions they're engaged in? Is this simply cognitive dissonance, or is there more to it? Any insight you can provide would be great. Okay, let's address this point by point. It seems like there's a disconnect from the rhetoric of Scientology and the way they pursue their goals. I would agree with you, but I think we're disagreeing on the examples of that. R245 could also be suicide. It just means if you kill someone, they will exteriorize. That's the only punchline to R245. If you kill yourself, you will exteriorize. What I mean is that Hubbard, he talks about the grand scale of existence. He does. And the fate of all life, and yet the clique is engaged in activities like increasing literacy and combating addiction. I'll stop right there. The Church of Scientology is only engaged in increasing literacy and combating addiction because they find it to be socially acceptable to do so. Scientologists do not care about literacy beyond the ability to read and write. So I had the ability to read and write at a very young age, and my formal education stopped when I was 11 years old. And any other literacy that I seem to have is from my time studying and using dictionaries in Scientology, and the fact that I exposed myself to tons of written and spoken words. And I tried to read books and listen to speeches or talks or whatever of people who are, educated. So my point is, all Scientologists care about is having someone who's not illiterate. It's not like Scientology would ever advocate someone who take higher education to, become more immersed in the humanities. So when you see maybe a tutor center, a Scientology-based tutor center, or a tutoring center, a study center, that's only to create positive feelings in the environment. It's not because Scientology actually gives a shit about that. When it comes to getting people off of drugs, it's fine. People need to come off of drugs, but Scientology only cares about that because it's good press. It also makes Scientology a lot of money. And it's how they can sort of pretend to Scientologists that the church itself is actually has a public benefit to the world at large, as opposed to just a benefit to Scientologists. Noble as these pursuits might be, they are not going to make this group an international influencer. Yeah, but I would counter with, well, what would make the church an international influencer? In my opinion, nothing would. And I'm curious to know what would be examples of things that you think they should be engaging in other than literacy initiatives and, getting people off of drugs or doing speeches about human rights. I've already said in this answer, Scientologists only do those things because they can put out press releases saying that they do them. But you are right. Those activities have nothing to do with what L. Ron Hubbard discusses about the grand scale of existence and the fate of all life and the true goals of Scientology. Those activities have nothing to do with them. So if your question is, how do I reconcile the difference between the rhetoric in this case that we're talking about and these social betterment activities that you're talking about, the answer is that as a Sea Org member and as a Scientology staff member, I knew that these activities existed as a public outreach. These things existed to do good in society so that we can tell people we do good in society. I was in on that joke. By the way, I'm reading these questions from just a document I put together, copied and pasted from comments on other YouTube videos, and then I'm gonna just do a couple more, and then I'm gonna tackle the questions you guys are actually asking in present time. Okay, I think I've answered that question. All right, I'm going to jump to answering your guys' questions, the live questions. Here we go. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I should have got water and not just soda. Hey, let's see if the dog will come. Goliath! Goliath! Special guest! Come here, boy. Come here. Can you get the camera? Goliath, what's up here? Goliath, what's up here, boy? Goliath, what's up here? There you are. There's the fluffy boy. You want to say hi? He doesn't bark unless you're like knocking at the door. Go ahead. What's up here? You want to? Oh, say hi to everybody. Okay. Thanks for coming to visit, Goliath. Okay, he wants to hang around for a bit. He can stay. I won't make you leave. Okay, let's find some questions. If Miscavige dies, will the church say he decided to leave his body like LRH said to have done? Oh, yeah, they would have to. Oh, mosquitoes. Oh, gosh. Yes, they would absolutely figure out a way to explain why he had to drop his body on purpose. He received some secret message from L. Ron Hubbard. Okay, boo-boo, you gotta go. Ugh. Thanks for visiting, Goliath. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, next, I said, is there a get-together in Denver? There is a get-together. I think one of the readers of Tony's blog organized a little get-together in Denver. I have a cousin I'm going to visit in Denver. I also going to do some sort of a live event with Chris and Chris Shelton, good friend of mine, and Steve Canaan, or Steve Canaan, I don't know how to pronounce his name, an Australian reporter that I think has done a great job. He's going to be there. I'm looking forward to meeting him. Kathy Schenkelberg will be there. She does the play Squeeze My Cans. Looking forward to meeting her. My good friends Mark and Claire will be there. So a lot of good stuff going on. Just a short little get-together. Let's see what's next. Oh, cool. Hi from Philadelphia. What was the food like in Scientology? You know, I was never one to really complain about the food in the Sea Org. The food at Flag is better than the food in Los Angeles. Lots of chicken, lots of eggs, lots of hamburger and rice, and everything else is kind of filler. Will Tom ever admit he's the number 2 person in the cult? No, he will not, because technically he isn't. Okay. Well, I thought there was a whole bunch of questions. Am I missing some here? I saw a lot of actual questions come up. Okay, hold on. All right, yeah, there's a lot more. Sorry, guys, I'm just going through the questions, finding ones that actually are asking for answers. What can you tell us about the founding of Scientology in New Zealand? That's a little bit above my pay grade. There's probably others who can answer that question much, much better. How many days a year is the Freewinds ship out at sea? Stu C. Okay, it's usually out at sea. It's when you say out at sea, like even if it's docked, like if a cruise ship goes out for a 3-day cruise and then it's sitting at dock for a while, I still consider that out to sea. I consider anytime it's not in dry dock getting repairs to pretty much be out to sea. And I would say it's probably out to sea 80% of the time, 85% of the time. And if anyone is more familiar with the subject and has a better answer, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. Do you personally believe that ICOC and Scientology have connections? I don't believe what ICOC. I don't know what ICOC means. Define ICOC. The International Churches of Christ. No, Scientology doesn't have any connection with any other official church other than this weird relationship has blossomed between the Nation of Islam and Scientology. So, no, the ICOC and Scientology do not have connections. Why is Marty Rathbun making these new videos? My personal understanding, after speaking with people who know much better than I, better than me, whatever, is Marty Rathbun is, and has been for a very long time, very mentally unstable. Keep in mind Now, look, I'm not saying, oh, now that he's doing things I disagree with, I'm going to completely condemn him. No. It's been brought to my attention, it's been pointed out to me recently, that Marty is one of the only Sea Org members I have ever heard of who left the Sea Org, left Scientology, 3 times, and then came back. Just think for a moment what kind of mental fuckery would be required to justify making a complete 180 in everything you believed up to that point 6 times. First you decide to leave, then you come back. Then you decide to leave, then you come back. Then you leave again, then you come back. Like, it requires a special kind of instability to behave that way. And even though up to this point I've been saying, yeah, Marty probably took money from the church, the fact is it makes more sense if he didn't take money from the church, and that what he's doing right now is just a further manifestation of his mental instability. He's so fixated on the fact that Larry Wright didn't take everything Marty said and act like it was gospel. He's so fixated on the fact that Larry Wright might have gotten data and information from people other than Marty Rathbun. You'll notice in these videos that Marty's doing, there's several points where he reads something that Larry Wright says in the book, Going Clear. And Larry Wright doesn't even attribute the information to Marty Rathbun. He's just saying it. And Marty will read this quote from Larry Wright and go, I never said that. He just made that up. I never told him that. And what he doesn't say is, Marty, why do you think that just because Larry Wright wrote something you didn't tell him, that means Larry Wright made it up? Like, those are the only 2 choices? Like, do you really think you're the only source Larry Wright used for his book? Anyway, I won't go on and on and on about it. But Marty's a little crazy, and I think he always has been. When he was in the Scientology, when he's out of Scientology, and I know I've been very hard on him in my last videos, but that's because I take it personally. I take it personally that he has hurt his friends personally. But it is what it is, so there you go. Next question, what do independent Scientologists believe in terms of Thetan, Xenu, reincarnation, etc.? I don't know if it's fair to paint all independent Scientologists with one brush. But if I were to give the most broad-ranging answer that I could, independent Scientologists technically believe in everything L. Ron Hubbard ever said, but just believes that it's being misused in the hands of the Church of Scientology. Now, again, I can already think of examples of how that statement is not totally accurate. There are many independent Scientologists that reject the very structured system of ethics and justice that exists within Scientology. So where it gets a little convoluted is, you could have some independent Scientologists that have chosen to discard certain parts of Scientology and others who've chosen to discard other parts. And at that point, it stops being a standardized subject, which the Church of Scientology certainly considers itself to be. But otherwise, for the most part, the independent Scientologists believe about Thetans and Xenu and reincarnation is no different than the normal Church of Scientology. Next question. What the hell happened to Marty? Okay, I just answered that. Could Marty be having post-hypnotic suggestion? I reject that idea. What are your thoughts on Grant Cardone? Grant Cardone... I shouldn't just bash people in these videos. Grant Cardone is the epitome of the stereotype of a fucking douchebag. I mean, even in Scientology, this guy comes across as a douchebag. So, a lot of Scientologists, because I think they're used to just automatically admiring someone who is successful, they're sort of programmed to look at people like Grant and be like, oh, you're so successful, which means you're a great Scientologist, which means I have to love you. But the truth is, Grant Cardone is embarrassingly cringeworthy. I mean, you look at this guy, he's douchebag even by Scientology standards. And did you know Grant has a twin brother? Grant Cardone and Gary Cardone, both in Scientology. I think he's an interesting guy, but he hangs on. Okay, next. Perhaps LRH knew that if people went to the psychs, they would be told they are fine, and it's Scientology that's cray-cray. Well, look, I've mentioned a few times recently that I read a book on Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And the methods that Jim Jones used to recruit, to motivate, and to retain the members that were closest to him are absolutely identical to the methods L. Ron Hubbard used to recruit and motivate and retain the people that were closest to him in the Sea Org, and before the Sea Org, just closest to him in Scientology. And one of the methods used is this constantly creating this idea, this us versus them, that we're being persecuted by the big bad evil powers that run this world. And the psychiatrists played that role for L. Ron Hubbard from the very early days of Dianetics and Scientology. This may be a dumb question, but what's the difference between beaching and overboarding? Excellent question. Beaching is when you're overboarding was just a penalty. It was a one-time acute penalty. I shouldn't say one time. If you're being overboarded, it's something that's happening to you right now. You're just thrown overboard as a penalty, and then you're brought back on, and you're supposed to learn some fucking lesson from that. Beaching is in the Sea Org when they literally just kick you out of the Sea Org. And it's called beaching because when it was done in the early days of the Sea Org, they would literally just kick you off the ship with whatever money you had in your pocket and the clothes on your back, and it was up to you to get home. Like, they're like, okay, you're done. Boom, you're out. Get off the ship. And that's called beaching. That wasn't a penalty per se. That was the ultimate penalty of essentially being expelled from the Sea Org. And yes, that does still happen. They do still call that beaching. Like, so if they just kick you out the door overnight without any proper ethics and justice procedures, which are supposed to exist in Scientology, that's called beaching. You can be beached in the Sea Org. Yes, if you're in the Sea Org and you go to the appropriate person and say, I'm having suicidal thoughts, boom, you're out the next day. Out the next day. If you attempt suicide, boom, you're beached. You're out. You're done. That's it. Okay. What was the joke with the Uber driver? Oh, so I was in LA last week for some A&E Scientology aftermath related stuff. And on my way back home from the Tampa airport, I had an Uber driver who I assumed was not a Scientologist because of something that he said. And then I said something like, we started talking about how you can't keep a business open in downtown Clearwater. And I made a comment about it's hard to get non-Scientologists to come downtown because I think a lot of the non-Scientologists think that the Scientologists are still dominating the streets of downtown Clearwater. And I said something like, I don't think the non-Scientologists realize that you don't see the Scientologists on the street as much as you used to. What I mean by that is you don't see the Sea Org members on the streets. Anyway, I think that was his clue to drop me a hint that he was a Scientologist, so I didn't say anything really insulting. And he goes to me, he says, I had a passenger cancel a ride with me last week because he saw on my Uber profile that I was a Scientologist. And I was like, what do you mean your Uber profile? And apparently the Uber drivers have profiles. After he mentioned this, I spent the next 10 minutes trying to pull up his profile and see what he's talking about, and I couldn't do it. But anyway, in the special comments section of his Uber driver profile, he had said, I'm a Scientologist. So he'd booked a fare, and then the fare called him and said, are you really a Scientologist? And he said, yes. And he goes, oh, then cancel my ride. And he goes, oh, it's okay. We don't bite or anything. And he says, cancel my ride. Just cancel my ride. I don't want to get a ride from a Scientologist. And the driver's telling me the story, and he goes, thanks, Leah Remini. And, hold on. And I'm like, oh boy, he's really stepped in it here. And so now I made small chit chat with him until we got near my house. And then I was like, hey, by the way, have you ever seen Leah Remini's show? And he's like, oh no, I don't need anyone to tell me about my religion. And I'm like, yeah, well, I figured you hadn't, not only do I know you're not allowed to, but if you had seen the show, you probably would have known that I was on season 1. And you should watch the show, because if you do, you'll understand why the public don't want to support anything to do with Scientology. It's not Leah Remini's fault. It's what Scientology does to people and to families. And I was like, thanks for the ride. So anyway, oh, good times. All right, what's next? If you had stayed in Scientology, would you have allowed your children to be raised as Scientologists? And what would that have entailed? Well, of course, if I'd stayed in Scientology, I would have allowed my children to be raised as Scientologists, because no Scientologist would object to their children being raised as a Scientologist. What would that have entailed? Oh, boy. So, nothing really. I mean, it's kind of a long answer. So, if you're a child and you're being raised as a Scientologist, first of all, I really don't want to answer this question. It's a little too involved. I'm going to have to, let me copy and paste this, because I'm going to make this its own breakout video of what does it mean to actually, What does a child experience? See, my experience growing up in Scientology was mostly as a staff member. Let me do an actual video on what would a normal public child experience growing up in Scientology, and I'll give it some justice. Okay, so there's no one else out there teaching people to exteriorize. Can you expand on this? Well, what's there to expand on? I think one of the things people found fascinating in the early days of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbardism is that he was saying these techniques will help you exteriorize from your body. There are no other religious groups or spiritual groups that I know of that are doing that. That doesn't mean they don't exist. Okay. Astral projecting. Astral projecting from spirituality is kind of like exteriorizing. Oh, absolutely. It's like exteriorizing. But is anyone out there successfully teaching people to do that? Let me know. If you've gone clear, would you still have hair? No, I wouldn't. Glad to see you made it safely home. You'll probably need to do a whole video about your trip to SoCal. True. Is there a clear distinction between exteriorization in Scientology and astral projection in other New Age belief systems? So what makes that question hard for me to answer is I do not know the detailed explanations of how astral projection is supposed to work. And so I can't really explain if there's a distinction. As someone who, when I was in Scientology, I assumed they were kind of the same thing. I also assumed that Scientology's version of exteriorization was a little more causative, a little more being aware of it. But again, what do I know? Because I didn't really know what astral projection was supposed to be. What's the story with Marty? Answered that. Confidentiality agreement. Not sure what's going on there. Do you know who Mark Hughes is? I do very much know who Mark Hughes is. I've been looking into the troubled teen industry, and I went to a similar rehab school that Mark did. Oh, wait, we might be talking about different Marks. I know the Mark Hughes who's a former Scientology executive. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Greg Hughes. No, I'm not sure that I know who Mark Hughes is. Random question here about Sea-Doo and Herbalife's founder. Well, what's the question about Herbalife's founder? Go ahead and ask. Did you get to sleep with Tom Cruise? I thought you and Chris were supposed to stream together this week. Did you catch the end of his? Well, we're going to stream together when I'm in Denver this weekend. I want to go to Big Blue and pretend like I'm rich. That's fine. I always thought literacy was to combat the overt withhold sequence. No, but I can understand why you would say that, but no. I mean, when you say the focus on literacy, the focus that Scientologists put on making sure there are no words in the materials they're studying that they don't understand is actually what you're saying. It's to prevent them from, failing in their study of the subject and eventually giving up study of the subject. So I see what you're saying. But I don't consider an emphasis on looking up the definitions of words as an emphasis on literacy in general, right? So that's all. I thought, Oh, scientist? You thought it said former scientist? That's funny. Did you ever watch Andy Nolch? I've tried. But Andy, I'm sorry. You're a douchebag. And I say that because of the content that you put out and not because of whatever's in your heart. I've never met Andy. I've never spoken to him. Some of the comments he's left make me feel like he's a normal guy, and some of the other stuff makes me feel like he's out of his fucking mind. But that's fine. He's free to be who he is. When is he reading these questions? Oh, that's fine. I guess I'm really backlogged on these things, guys. Questions come from previous episodes. I think I covered the Marty thing. Is Scientology Center still in Times Square? It's not like literally in Times Square. It's off of Times Square. And if we're talking about the same thing. Rathbun. Okay, more Rathbun videos. Hi from South Korea. Seriously. Awesome. Thanks for joining from South Korea. I'd love to visit there. Monica's lawsuits gets dropped. I'm looking for real questions. Scrolling through the list. How do Scientologists view animals and pets like dogs and cats? So this is funny. Scientologists do believe that Thetans can occupy dogs and cats and shit and animals. So Scientologists are very pro-pet. I'm sure there's Scientologists out there that hate dogs and cats. But as a general thing, Scientologists are very pro-animals. Frank Liebel, I want to know what Aaron to comment. Do Scientologists believe in ghosts and haunted houses, etc.? Absolutely yes. Scientologists believe that haunted houses, ghosts haunting places are just thetans that are still pissed off from when they died and somehow managed not to get sucked up to the implant station on Mars or Venus or Mercury or wherever the hell it's supposed to be. And that you can actually audit or telepathically communicate with those ghosts and get them to go pick up a body. Scientologists who have done the OT levels are very wrapped up in getting thetans to pick up bodies. I think the idea is that just floating around outside of a body is not very helpful, because only Scientology can actually sort of get you back into tip-top shape as a thetan, and you can only do Scientology if you have a body, because you do need to be able to hold the cans of the e-meter in order to get Scientology auditing. So Scientologists want all ghosts and thetans and spirits to go pick up bodies, which quite frankly is what they're doing on OT7. They're auditing body thetans and other thetans in general to get them to pick up bodies. Great question. Ghosts, if Miscavige died, who would take his place? Anybody's guess. It's almost pointless to speculate. Dogs are from Pluto and cats are from Venus. Okay. Marty has been bought by the Church of Scientology. It's very likely, it is just as likely that he literally has not accepted any money, and he is just insane. Insane is a little too general and derogatory, but he truly has some condition. Okay, what's next here? You look very shiny. My nickname should be Tamator. Tamator. If you get that joke, let me know. Whose ministers can perform marriages and that Scientology... Is this a two-part question? A November 2007 article in The Varsity, a University of Toronto student newspaper, stated that the Church of Scientology is classified as a religious nonprofit organization in Canada whose ministers can perform marriages, and that Scientologist public servants are allowed to take time off work for Scientologist holidays. That's kind of funny. However, since marriage is governed in Canada by provincial law, it's unclear whether Scientology is actually accredited in any Canadian province to perform legal marriages. I can't really comment on... Well, I'm not sure what the question is. So... I don't know what the question is. I'd like to hear more about what kind of questions are asked during auditing. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste this again as a standalone video, because I'll actually do a video where I take the bulletins, the Scientology bulletins that give all the commands for the grades, which is the lower half of Scientology's bridge, and I'll give tons of examples of them. I think that would be really interesting. Why is the church blue? There is literally no reason other than someone decided they liked that color. It's not some official color of Scientology. Do Scientologists believe in ghosts? Yeah, we covered that. How many maiden voyage events are there a year? Well, he's talking about, this question is referring to the Scientology's cruise ship, the Free Winds. Every year celebrates the anniversary of its maiden voyage, which is sometime in the summer. It's in like June something. And so there's only one event, but the event lasts for like a week. And so I think that there's 4 or 5 nights where on the ship they actually hold 4 or 5 different events. And then they take videos of that event and they ship it out to every org in the world. And they have, it's called the Summer of Events. In June, they'll do like they'll take those 4, let's say it's 4 nights, 4 events on the ship, and they'll turn it into 4 weeks of event with one night being aired or shown or televised each week. And it's used for major fundraising, basically. Okay. What is Technique 88? Honestly, I forget. It's not something that has any relevance to modern day Scientology. I've read about Technique 88. It was just almost historical. And again, if someone is much more familiar with Technique 88 and thinks I'm full of shit, please let me know in the comments below. Who is the number 2 person in Scientology right now? What happens after David Miscavige either blows, which means escapes, or dies? Thank you very much. Technically, there is no number 2 in Scientology. I've described Mike Rinder as having been number 2 at various times. I've described Marty Rathbun as having been number 2 at various times. Because of the convoluted organizational structure of Scientology's international management organizations, there is no number 2. Would you call David Miscavige's assistant number 2? Would you call his deputy number 2? Would you call the actual senior manager of Scientology International number 2? Anybody could be number 2, but the truth is there is no number 2. There is only a number 1. So, okay, I've answered that. Does Scientology believe in Allah? Well, Allah is just God, and Scientology does not believe in God. How does the church think Marty is going to have any credibility anymore? They don't. They don't. If anything, it's just a slap in the face to all the former Scientologists who feel that Marty's the one that put them down their path of leaving Scientology, and to have him... this is being done just for the Scientologists themselves, saying, look, even the number one Scientology critic is saying that all the other Scientology critics are full of shit, so don't believe a word any of them say. Is the captain of the Freewinds treated like a celebrity in Scientology, or are they just like any other Sea Org member? Good question. Within the Sea Org, he's just like any other Sea Org member. He's pretty much like Debbie Cook. When Debbie Cook was the commanding officer of the Flag Service Organization, she was just any other Sea Org member, but she was also the public face of Flag. So she was a celebrity within the world of Scientology, but she didn't necessarily get treated any better than she otherwise would have been as the commanding officer of a Sea Org org. And that applies to Mike Napier, the captain of the Freewinds, captain of the actual ship itself. Now, there's another woman. Her name is Sharon. I'm going to go totally blank on her last name. Mike Napier, or Mark Napier, again, Mark, don't remember. He's the one actually the captain of the ship itself. There's Sharon Weber, who is the captain of the service organization on the ship that actually delivers the auditing and the courses. Okay, any updates on the land ownership Scientology control over downtown? When we say any updates, nothing has changed. So to that, I would say no updates. 3 times? I thought it was only 2. Nope, it was 3. Is his wife in Scientology now? Marty's wife. You mean Marty's not the wife he married after he left the Sea Organization? No, I don't think Marty has actually gone back to Scientology. I don't. I think he's doing these videos just to show that he's more right than all of the other critics. Meaning he might be helping Scientology right now. In fact, the Church of Scientology might be producing those videos. But that still doesn't mean he's actually rejoined Scientology. That would be too simplistic. You'll notice that the Scientology's hate website about Marty is still up. Marty's, all his blog posts about, I think there are maybe, I saw a post that said there's like 5 to 7 of Marty's historical blog posts that have been removed, but for the most part, his entire blog is still up. It's hard to imagine striking a deal with the church and still having his hate website up and still having his blog up. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I think Marty's wife is doing whatever the hell Marty's doing. Marty runs the show. Marty's wife deflects to Marty on all things. That is a fact. NOI is not actually Islam. That is true. The Nation of Islam is absolutely not Islam. It has almost no similarities to Islam. Okay, is there a procedure in place to reverse a declare or to fight it? Yeah, there is actually. One of the principles in Scientology is that you can never completely close the door on anybody. You're supposed to always leave the door open, at least a crack. So the policy that lays out the 5 steps you have to go through to get back into the good graces of Scientology after being expelled. I forget the name of the policy, but it gives the steps. It's called A to E, A, B, C, D, E. And so the funny joke I heard is Marty's doing his A to E while Mike and Lee are doing A and E. That's a good joke. Okay, let's see. Marty's looking for the balanced view, but all he found are extremes. I totally agree. Is Marty back in Scientology again? Already covered that. Planning a trip to Clearwater soon. Any suggestions on any activities I can get into? I want to help bring Scientology down. I hate the policy of disconnection. Honestly, the best way to bringing Scientology down is, it depends on how you define that. Scientology is bringing itself down. The number of people joining Scientology is at an all-time low. The number of people leaving Scientology is at an all-time high. You don't really have to do very much to bring Scientology down. Also, I want to remind everybody, organizations like the Nazi Party and the KKK still exist. So this whole black and white idea of getting rid of Scientology, I think, is unrealistic and unnecessary. The fact that Scientology's methods continue to be exposed, the fact the court of public opinion is much more important in this battle than the court of law or anything the government could step in and do. And the public education campaign and raising public awareness is really what's going to suck away Scientology's influence and power. And it's already happening. I do believe it's reached the point of no return. I don't think it would take something. It would take a significant internal reformation in order for Scientology to gain any public acceptance or credibility. Okay, so you said any activities you can do. Oh, there's great things to do here in Clearwater. Go down to Honeymoon Island. Go down to Indian Rocks Beach. You can go to Clearwater Beach, of course. Jet skiing, paddleboarding, visit Clay's bar downtown called the Lucky Anchor. Tons of stuff to do. Planning a trip to Clearwater. Okay, that's the same comment. Do Scientology as a whole discuss ghosts, and what do they believe about ghosts? We discussed that. Have you noticed that most Scientologists that have spoken up publicly seem to have the habit of continuing to brag about their accomplishments while in Scientology? I don't see it that way. I don't think the people who've left Scientology brag about their accomplishments other than perhaps in a way to maybe establish their bona fides as someone who can speak with authority on what happens in the organization. If you have any examples that would apply to me, like for example, I have said that during the golden age of tech evolution in 1995 and 1996, which I will not go into defining any further than I already have right now, like I was the first out-of-org trainee in the world to finish the program that was being conducted at that time, training the new supervisors. When I say that, it's not to brag about what a great Scientologist I was. It's to give a little bit of a context that my involvement was somewhat different than just any other staff member that was there. Because I was the first to graduate, David Miscavige knows who I am. David Miscavige's RTC representatives knew who I was. They supervised me directly. I then went on to help the other roughly 600 to 700 trainees make it through their training. So that's how I came to know so many of the Scientologists around the world. That's how by the time I was declared, I had at least 2,500 to 3,000 Scientologists on my Facebook friends list. And so let's crunch a little bit of math. Let's say, I mean, that's over 10% of all the Scientologists in the entire world were on my friends list. And if you're wondering, well, how does something like that come to be? That's just how it comes to be. Okay, so now I can't find my mouse pointer. Okay, good. There we are. All right. Just give me some examples of Scientologists bragging about what they accomplish in Scientology, and I'll try to give a better response. Thoughts about Captain Bill. I just don't know anything about Captain Bill. Bill Robertson, as I think you're talking about. It sounds like he's just as crazy as L. Ron Hubbard was. Captain Bill was the captain of the Apollo, then he left Scientology and he created his own organization, and he claims to have written up and codified all the remaining OT levels through telepathically speaking with L. Ron Hubbard. So welcome to Crazy Town, that's what I say. Do you know if you're being followed by the church when you're out with your family? I suspect there are many times when I am. I've never caught them following me, but if you look at the website they put up on me at AaronSmith-Levin.com, a vicious hater, there's plenty of evidence there of them following me. And also, Clay Irwin is the guy that owns the Lucky Anchor Bar downtown Clearwater. He's been a little vocal in the press criticizing the church, and he just discovered a hidden camera on his Scientology neighbor's property pointing right at his house and right at his driveway. So they were filming his house. And he's just a non-Scientologist bar owner in downtown Clearwater who happened to say some critical things in the media, and they're fucking monitoring his activities. So, what's keeping them from putting it on the Scientologist house? I got a Scientologist that lives behind me. I got a Scientologist that lives in front of me. And what the fuck is keeping them from recording my driveway and running the license plate of anyone who pulls in? Nothing is keeping them from doing that. Can I get a shout out? Arden Heichel. Where are you from, Arden? How can I get the Squirrel Busters at my door? I think the Squirrel Busters are in high demand. They're also probably in hiding, and so I don't think anyone's going to be getting the Squirrel Busters at their door. Who's your favorite rapper? Even though Kanye is certifiably insane, you cannot deny his rapping skills. Plus, you got to give a shout out to the white rapper, Eminem. Jay-Z's great. I just don't listen to a lot of rap, but I think you probably mean hip-hop, right? It's not really quite rap these days. All right, NBA players on a bus. Same reason Steve Hassan. Okay, hey Susie Gray. Same reason Steve Hassan still talks like he's in a cult. That's kind of funny. I have not read Steve Hassan's books. I don't like just talking shit about people. But if I actually felt that Steve Hassan was just as interested in helping people as he was interested in selling books, I might actually read his book. That's kind of a mean thing to say, but otherwise I'd read the fucking book. Very similar to Scientology. Your head looks very shiny. Another comment about my shiny head. Sorry, guys. Maybe I have oily skin and I don't have a makeup artist. No, it's kind of funny. As soon as I start to sweat, I get oily, and it doesn't go away unless I take a shower. Okay, you very thank you for okay. I said my nickname should be Tamator. In the movie Maui, Jermaine Clement plays a giant undersea crab that collects shiny things and pastes it all over himself, and he sings a song in the movie called "I'm So Shiny," and the song is hilarious, and my kids are addicted to it, and I know all of the words, and so there you go. What's next? Another comment about a shiny head. What the fuck? It's a conspiracy. All right. Do you know anything about landmark forms or EST training? And Synanon? Interesting parallels you might find interesting. I don't know anything about those groups other than the fact that L. Ron Hubbard says they are a ripoff of Scientology, and that Scientologists would be crucified for having anything to do with landmark or EST, and that my understanding of these groups, it's a little unfair because I have no direct familiarity whatsoever, is that they are extremely cult-like. They are very much like Scientology. And the company Lululemon that sells yoga wear offers free landmark training to all of its staff. And in order to become a corporate C-suite executive at Lululemon, you have to embrace the landmark system, which is incredibly fucking cult-like. Meaning for a company to say that in order to be an executive in our publicly traded company, you've got to be down with the landmark program. That's pretty fucked up if you ask me. Someone ought to write a strongly worded letter. Is there anything going on at the Chicago org? The Chicago org is a small failing piece of crap org. And I'm not just saying that because they're not Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is also a small failing org. It's just that Philadelphia actually had a really, really good staff. And Chicago's never been even as successful as the Philadelphia org, and the Philadelphia org has never truly been successful. I did know the people that used to be on staff there. The people I know probably aren't still on staff there. Eric Martinez, Ryan Myers, Fazal Ahmad, Jennifer Latch now. These people were the staff members at Chicago org, and I know none of them are still there. What's the difference between beaching and offloading? Answered that. Marty strikes me. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about Marty. When Mike Rinder was an independent Scientologist, did he still believe LRH was coming back? I don't think, even though LRH was coming back is what the staff members at International Management were told, I think it became obvious that by the time he was supposed to come back, that was like 20 years ago. I don't know if Mike ever truly believed LRH was coming back. Most Scientologists were never told he was coming back and were told not to expect him to come back. Normal Scientologists were told that LRH was going off to Target 2 to get Scientology kickstarted on another planet while we finished up the job here. Not lying. I am not lying. That is really what people were told. Okay, what does check sheet progress mean? Or check sheet time? Good question. All Scientology courses are done with a check sheet. And a check sheet is just a small packet of papers that has everything you're supposed to do or read on the course on it. It's like a checklist. It's like a checklist of what you're supposed to do next on your course. So the item might say, read this chapter. And then you read the chapter and you put your initials on that line on the check sheet. So a checklist and check sheet are pretty much the same thing, except a check sheet is a specialized word that only applies to the Scientology course. Whereas a checklist might be your to-do items on your Scientology post. So again, the check sheet could be just defined as the checklist of items to read and actions to do in order to complete your course. And check sheet progress means how fast are you moving through your check sheet. Check sheet time is how long is your course supposed to take. So if you start a course, your check sheet will say this course should take you 2 weeks full-time, 40 hours per week. And then no one ever finishes courses in check sheet time. And so your supervisor might come to you and say, we need to talk about your check sheet progress. It's going too slow. So that's how those words are used. You have a conspicuous cigar box in a lot of your videos. What's your brand? I put it there just because it's kind of fancy. And if I didn't have that there, all you'd see is my ugly gray filing cabinet. So that's a Rocky Patel. It's a nice leather, beautiful leather, Rocky Patel humidor. So I do like Rocky Patel cigars. I actually mostly buy these off-brand Ecuadorian kind of off-label throwaways from Lucan's Liquor. They're delicious. They're so good. And they're mildly sweet. So there you go. What is an FESer? These are awfully specific questions. Okay, so when you get auditing, the term is FES. FES can be used as a noun, as a verb. FES stands for folder error summary. When you get auditing, the notes of all your auditing sessions are kept in a folder, and the folder is called a PC folder. And every now and then, if you're having trouble, well, okay, this is going to get into a technical definition, so whatever. There's a very precise way these PC folders are supposed to be put together. And one of the things every PC folder is supposed to contain is a folder error summary, which is a bunch of pink pieces of paper where you are supposed to note down every mistake that was made on this person in an auditing session. So it's called a folder error summary, a summary of all of the errors which appear in the notes in the folder. And that's so that if someone's having trouble in their auditing, someone can just update the FES and just already know what it is that's been done on this person that might have been done incorrectly. And an FESer is the person whose job it is to meticulously go through the auditing notes and make lists of things that were done wrong. And that's it. Good evening from Chile. Hola. Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. I don't know if good evening is the same thing as good night in Spanish. No. Buenas tardes is good afternoon. Buenas noches. All right, there we go. Can a person elect not to raise their children in Scientology without ramifications? Oh, fuck no. No. Keeping Scientology working is the policy letter in Scientology that says there is no halfway in, halfway out of Scientology. You do not let somebody be half-minded about being a Scientologist. You either with us or you're against us, live or die in the attempt. So no, you cannot be a Scientologist and then refuse to let your kids be raised as Scientologists and not expect ramifications. There will be ramifications. Have you interacted with any other new age groups then? I have not, which is why I realize sometimes I'll make a generally sweeping statement. And I just want to be clear when I do that, I'm always prefacing it with, to the best of my understanding. But I don't also claim to have an excellent understanding of some of the things that I'm making statements about. To the best of my understanding, there aren't groups out there teaching people how to exteriorize. But of course, when you mention astral projection, I'm sure there are lots of new age groups out there claiming to coach people on how to achieve this astral projection. I just don't know of them. I don't know who they are. I don't even believe Landmark and Est do that. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think someone high up knows about or even cares how viciously LRH and Scientology had been mocked in games like GTA 5 and Fallout 4? I don't know that David Miscavige gives a shit about Scientology being mocked in video games. I think he's more worried about it being mocked in the media. And I understand video games are a form of media, but I mean the media. So I don't think Miscavige would be specifically knowledgeable about a Scientology joke in Grand Theft Auto, for example. I just don't. But I also don't think he would care about that. He certainly has other things to worry about when it comes to Scientology being mocked and attacked and stuff like that. Causing an episode of derealization isn't that hard. Fake shooting at someone with a blank might actually work in that case. Derealization, is that the word you meant to use? But I think I get what you're saying. I'd probably agree with you. Rosicrucians teach astral projection. LRH was sued by them. That's funny. I guess I just have no idea what Rosicrucianism is. Is Tommy Davis Surrey's father? No. Look, if Mark Headley ever said anything that seemed to imply that, I think he was kidding. Okay? I'll try to remember to ask Mark about it this weekend when I see him. Do any Scientologists believe in God or the Bible? No. Anyone who says otherwise is intentionally lying to you because they think it makes Scientology seem more socially acceptable if they can convince you that Scientologists believe in God or Jesus or the Bible. They are not compatible. In fact, I did a breakout. So I've got about 6 hours of interviews with me and Mike Render, and I broke out a small portion where we discuss, can you believe in God in Scientology? And I broke out, it's on my channel, just look at the videos, it's in the history of the videos I've posted. I broke out my answer and Mike's answer separately so that they were digestible in length. So check it out, they're very good videos. Mark Hughes is Herbalife's founder, of course. Yeah, Mark Hughes is Herbalife's founder. Mark Hughes, again, this Herbalife is and was a cult. I apologize if that is hard to hear for any of you Herbalife distributors out there. but it is. Mark Hughes' personal story of success was one of the main recruiting tools that was used in Herbalife, and the guy died of a drug overdose, suicidal at a young age. Anyway, won't get into Herbalife stuff too much here. Do you have any updates on Brandon Reesdorf and how he's doing? Well, be more specific. I think he's doing just fine. He's getting along in life, and just be a little more specific. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You mentioned in a previous stream how Miscavige does not really like Travolta. Does Kelly Preston get any shade from the top for being married to him? No, in fact, I think Kelly Preston is well liked by Miscavige. She's a good example of a Scientologist. She's not surrounded by controversy. She speaks publicly. She speaks at Scientology events to help keep people involved. If it weren't for Kelly Preston, I don't believe John Travolta would still be in Scientology, personally. I think, Travolta is bisexual. I do think he's very much in love with Kelly Preston and very much in love with his children. And I think leaving Kelly would create more upset in John's life than he probably feels is justified. So I don't think Kelly gets shade for being married to John. John's never even been allowed on to OT7, and Kelly is, I believe, finished with OT7 and 8. Chris announced it too, that you will be in his podcast. Yeah, okay, good. I think it's probably a live podcast that we'll be doing. Is there any chance of doing a video with Chris Shelton in the style of the ones that you did with Mark and Mike Rinder and Nick Lister? Well, that's what I want to do. I prefer doing in-person interviews. That's what I do want to do with Chris. So, I'm going to do something with Chris next Saturday. Where was your favorite place to visit as a Scientologist? I know you speak of Unified Front from the churches regarding policies. What the fuck? Joe Hamlin, what are you trying to ask me? Where was your favorite place to visit as a Scientologist? I don't know what that question means. I know you speak of Unified Front from the church policies. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Can you go through an hour-by-hour breakdown of what a Sea Org member's day is like? I've had that question come in several times before, and that's very difficult. Because other than saying you work between these hours, and then you eat, and then you work, and then you eat, and then you work, and then you go to bed, I feel like what you're really asking for is examples of what do various Sea Org members actually get tasked with doing during the day. And I could answer that question, but even then, it's not very exciting. So I'm not sure what else to say on that. Thetans can occupy dogs and cats. Aren't there all genetic entities? Look, this subject of genetic entities in Scientology, even Scientologists don't understand what the fuck L. Ron Hubbard was talking about when he wrote about genetic entities. And when I say Scientologists believe that Thetans can occupy dogs and cats, that doesn't mean Scientologists believe all animals are animated by Thetans, because L. Ron Hubbard did talk about a genetic entity that's sort of like a mind that is inherent in every cell of the body, and that the GE is the mind of an animal. He has said that for sure. But he also says that bodies have GEs, that the human body has GEs, and even then it gets very murky very quickly as far as, well, how the fuck does that work? And because it's not actually relevant to going up Scientology's bridge to total freedom, most Scientologists just kind of gloss it over. It's something LRH wrote about early on in Scientology and then kind of left alone. And again, if you're more familiar with the relevance of GEs to the actual process of going up the bridge of Scientology than I am, and you think I'm full of shit, just let me know in the comments below. Are you and Mike going to set up a bowling league at Clay's new place in Clearwater? I'm not a good enough bowler to even want to join a bowling league, but I'll definitely be. I was hanging out with Clay last night at his bar, and he told me about he wants to set up six pool tables, 2 bowling alleys. He's actually looking at renting 2 places that are next to each other, one of which already has a big kitchen. He hopes to have it up and running in 6 to 8 months, and I'll tell you, if he actually does that, I'll be down there playing pool and doing some bowling all the time. I think downtown Clearwater is going to be able to have a little revival, renaissance period. And I think once the public at large in Pinellas County realize that the Sea Org members do not dominate downtown anymore, because they're all working the flag building and they eat in the flag building and you don't see them walking down the street anymore, I think they're going to realize, oh, you can go downtown and not feel like it's an invasion of the body snatchers. So I think they're going to come. Clear Sky Cafe just opened up a new bar right in downtown Clearwater, and that's going to pull people down. And then I think Look, the city of Clearwater is offering anyone $250,000 who will open up a restaurant and a brew pub in downtown Clearwater. You heard me right. $250,000 grant, fully forgiven after 5 years. They forgive 50 G's every year. So as long as you stay in business for 5 years, you don't owe the Clearwater any of that money back. That's pretty awesome. Okay. Just looking at the comments. Oy, come on. I lost my spot. All right, apparently I'm going to have to skip around because I lost my spot. Is it protocol for Scientologists to befriend young kids or teenagers they meet who are troubled youth from broken homes? I had one try to befriend me when very young. I'm going to say no. Not beyond the fact that it's sort of protocol for Scientologists to try to bring anybody into Scientology. So there's no special thing about targeting troubled youth, foster homes, orphanages, things like that. Not really. By the way, someone asked me, who am I? I'm a former Scientologist, and I was in season 1 of Leah's show. Other than that, just Google me, and you'll see I'm a vicious hater. All right. I am an agnostic atheist with regards to all deities, and I reject all supernatural belief. Okay. Miscavige said this line in the 2014 New Year's Eve speech. Quote, all the LRH admin tech specialists in... What? Quote, and all the LRH admin tech specialists in viewing third dynamics with sanity and prosperity. Okay, I think specialists is supposed to be specializes. All the LRH admin tech specialists view third dynamics with sanity and prosperity? Like, the exact quote as you've copied it here, Steve, makes no sense. And if that's what he said, his quote makes no sense. But here is what I think this quote is referring to. In Scientology, you have... LRH wrote bulletins and policy letters. And the bulletins and the policy letters are compiled into these massive volume sets. The bulletins were written in red ink on white paper, and the policies were written on green ink on white paper. The bulletins are supposed to be about the technical side of Scientology, and the policy letters are supposed to be about the administrative side of Scientology. So, the bulletins, the red on white, that's the tech. That's what Scientology tech, that is what is being referred to, the bulletins, what he writes in the bulletins. That is considered the first dynamic technology of Scientology. Scientology separates life into 8 dynamics. First is self. Second is family. Third is groups. Fourth is all mankind. Fifth is all plant and animal life. Sixth is the physical universe that you can touch and see. Seventh is supposed to be spirituality, and 8 is supposed to be infinity or God. The red on white Scientology material is supposed to be the technology for how to address the first dynamic, how to address people, as individual people. So in other words, how to help you with Scientology as a person. The policy letters are supposed to be the third dynamic technology of Scientology. The third dynamic is groups. So in other words, that is supposed to be L. Ron Hubbard's technology for how to manage groups. And so that's why if David Miscavige made this quote, all of the LRH admin tech all of LRH's admin tech specializes in viewing third dynamics with sanity and prosperity. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. That if you take Scientology's management system, which is contained in these policy letters, the green ink on white paper, that these policies is how you can take any group and make them sane and prosperous. Okay, I finally got out the whole answer. Derealization is a common stress response that tends to be brought up in the context of neurological explanations for astral projection-like experiences. Okay, that makes sense to me. Erica Christensen said during the last Christmas season that you can be a Christian in Scientology just like you can be a Jew in Scientology. Oh, by the way, someone commented how disgusting it was to hear me slurp the drinks while I was on camera. I'm sure that sounds gross. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, Erica Christensen is a liar, but she's doing it for the greater good. So she thinks it's okay. She's also being a little cute here, because the truth is there's tons of Jewish people in Scientology. Except the only reason anybody would call them Jewish isn't because they're practicing Judaism or attending synagogue or whatever. It's because they happen to celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas. There's tons of people from Israel in Scientology. And I discussed this in the last video. It just like, I don't know truly how to explain why. I mean, look, I'm not a Christian. I celebrate Christmas. So the fact that Scientologists celebrate Christmas doesn't make them Christians and Scientologists. And the fact that someone celebrates Hanukkah and is a Scientologist doesn't make them a practicing Jew and a Scientologist. But I think the fact that they do celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas makes it easy to say they're Jewish, because only Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah. But it's not true that only Christians celebrate Christmas. Do you see how this gets a little nuanced? The Jewish people who are in Scientology are not practicing Judaism. They just happen to have Jewish heritage and they celebrate Hanukkah. So, that's why Erica's being a little cute. You cannot be Christian and be a Scientologist. You cannot be a practicing Jew and be a Scientologist. It's not like they're going to bar the doors shut and keep you from walking in and taking courses if you practice Christianity or practice Judaism. But eventually, you're not able to do both. You can't be a true believer in Scientology and still believe in God and Christ. You can't. They're not compatible. Watch the 2 little videos on my channel where me and Mike each discuss our own versions of this answer. Okay. God has existed since before he made. Okay, wonderful. Hello, Matt from Baltimore. How you doing? Thanks for watching. Do the Jesus people pay you? What? I don't know what you're talking about. Would you consider doing one of these with your mom? Probably not. Me and my mom do not see eye to eye on a lot of this stuff, and I wouldn't want to make her feel bad. To not believe and find out God is real is much more dangerous proposition than believing and finding out there's nothing. That's fine. I've heard that. That's fine. Moving on. Was the Simpsons Family Guy crossover a problem for Nancy Cartwright, considering that Family Guy often makes jokes about Travolta and Cruz being gay? I have wondered this same thing. The Simpsons show itself has made Scientology jokes. Yet Nancy Cartwright doesn't have to quit The Simpsons. But Isaac Hayes had to quit South Park. Now, there's a difference between doing an entire episode talking nothing about, Xenu and the OT levels. The episode of Trapped in the Closet and Tom Cruise being a fudge packer, but he's literally working in a factory packing fudge into boxes, was so funny. So I would have to imagine it was some sort of a problem. And I don't know quite how they justify it other than Nancy Cartwright makes massive amounts of money from her show, and so they wouldn't want her to give that up, and yet Isaac Hayes was not making massive amounts of money from South Park. Do you think there could be the next L. Ron Hubbard living amongst us right now? And if so, what would he write about? Well, if you mean by that the person who's literally going to claim to be the L. Ron Hubbard reincarnate and take control of the Church of Scientology, no, I do not. If you mean is there going to be someone to start a new age-ish religion that rises to the size and infamy that Scientology has, maybe, but I don't think that's what you're asking. I see that God scares you. Are you talking to me? I'm not scared of God, whether he exists or not. I can't tell if you guys are arguing amongst yourselves in the comments here, but I'm going to assume that you are. What have you heard about LRH's final years? I've heard his mental health declined sharply. Well, from what I've read, which is all I can comment on because I wasn't there, I've heard the exact same things, and everything I have read and heard about that I believe to be true. Hello, Christine Smith. If we humans are not those low-key Thetans from the Xenu story who had false memories of Jesus and Muhammad implanted in them, how come we, the high-key Thetans, have Christianity and Islam? So, how do I answer this question? Here's the answer. Here's an answer to that question. I think it would be a mistake to think that the only time Thetans could have been implanted... Please realize I'm answering this from the viewpoint of how a Scientologist would explain this, not what I believe. That if the Thetans that were blown up in the volcanoes with the hydrogen bomb 75 million bazillion years ago, if those Thetans were implanted with the ideas about Muhammad and Christianity and Jesus, That doesn't mean that's the only time thetans could be implanted with those ideas. Scientologists believe that there is an implant station on the far side of the moon, and on Mercury, and on Venus, and on Mars. By the way, if you have more detailed knowledge on the locations of the implant stations, the alleged locations, and I'm getting it slightly wrong, comment below. But I know about the far side of the moon, and I'm almost positive about Mars, and I'm kind of making up Mercury and Venus because I think I've read that somewhere too. Scientologists believe there are implant stations in these places, that when you're dying and you see the white light, and they say, don't go towards the white light is the implant station. And you get sucked into the implant station, and you get your thetan memory wiped, and you get implanted with all sorts of things. And that happens to even the normal high-level thetans that are up to controlling bodies. And so that is the answer to your question, that anytime you die and go to the implant station, they can re-implant you with those ideas. I believe in me. There you go. Did you feel Scientology worked better anywhere other than the U.S.? Is British Scientology more LRH focused, America more purist, etc.? No, Scientology has managed to create sort of a very even balance amongst how Scientology is delivered worldwide. So the answer to your question is no. Sea Org tasks. Yes, I'm specifically interested in what boring, mundane labor in Sea Org is. Okay, I understand. It's just that every Sea Org member has a different job. And so that's why it's hard to answer. I want to answer your question. I want it. If we were casually speaking, I could give you many examples. There's so many examples to give. I just feel it's almost pointless to give any at all. Hi, I am Daniel from Costa Rica. Thanks for your work. Great channel. Thank you for watching, Daniel. I think that you, Mike, and Lee are doing something good by telling what is going on behind the scenes of Scientology. Thank you very much. Can someone make a living being an ex-Scientologist? You actually cannot. Now, let me give you an example. Like Chris Shelton, for example. You know, Chris has his channel monetized. I know he also has a Patreon account set up. I know he also has a merch store. So if you mean like for Chris, for example, is it possible for Chris to pay his bills by doing his YouTube channel? I think it is. You know, if Mike Rinder were to do a giant book deal and get a big old advance, is that possible he could make enough money to cover his bills? Yeah, it is. But Mike Rinder, since leaving Scientology, has not made a living off being an ex-Scientologist. Meaning, yeah, sure, if he participates in a lawsuit and he serves as an expert witness, I'm sure he gets compensated. That's not enough to pay your bills. Mike hasn't done a book. Mike was actually working for me for the last couple of years before he started working full-time on Leah's show. So even then, Mike wasn't making his living being a former Scientologist. So I'm not aware of... if you have any more specific examples of what you mean by that, definitely let me know. Like, my channel's not monetized. I haven't made a single penny off of any of my videos, off of appearing on Leah's show, off of anything. Nor do I want to, because I don't need the money, and I don't want the church to be able to degrade what I'm doing by saying I'm doing it for profit. Someone making money from their efforts so that they can pay their bills, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I just don't want the church to be able to point that finger at me. That's all. It's kind of a personal thing. Have Goliath and Bruno met? Not yet. If I brought Goliath to the bar last night, they would have met. Clay's bar downtown, the Lucky Anchor, is dog friendly, and I brought Goliath down there a couple times. He's has a great time when he goes down there, and he'll meet Bruno very soon. My big dog, Goliath, is actually a little scared of little dogs. He gets all whiny and whatnot. Okay, it's already been 80 minutes, and hello, Vitali. How are you doing? Can you still see through the new fence? No, I can't. All right, I'm going to have to cut it short because I'm getting notices on my phone that people are about to come over and knock on my door. So let me leave it at that. I'm going to be doing these often. The only reason I didn't do them for a week, I thought I was going to have time while I was in LA to do these, and I just was so busy I didn't have time. But I'm home now, and I do have time, and I will be doing them. So thank you guys for watching. I'll try to give at least 30 minutes notice whenever I do a live stream, and talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.